All right, we'll go ahead and get started. We'd like to welcome everyone to our monthly VCI webinar. I'm Ricky Bloomfield. I'm a physician and lead the clinical and health informatics work on the health software team at Apple and am a member of VCI. And we're excited to give you a few updates this morning on the state of smart health cards. After I kick things off, then we will hear from Jake and Tricia from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, who are going to walk us through their state's launch of smart health cards a few months ago. After them, we'll hear from Steve Posnack from the ONC, who's here to talk about the importance of interoperability and how smart health cards are a great example of what we can achieve when building on open standards. After him, we'll hear from Rick Clow from the state of California, who will share an update about a communication that his state made to smart health card holders earlier this year, including the community response to that communication. Following Rick, we'll hear from several of our technical leads from Microsoft, MITRE, and the Commons Project, who will give a technical update on specification enhancements as well as planning. And then lastly, we'll hear from Dr. Brian Anderson, who will share a few closing remarks. So we've seen a lot of progress in the last few months. We now have over 200 million people in the US who have access to a smart health card, which is an increase of 25 million in just the first quarter of this calendar year. The number of smart health cards issuers has grown from 428 at the end of last year to over 500 now. We now have 516 issuers, and that represents more than a 20% increase in the past 12 weeks. Also, the number of US states and territories adopting smart health cards is now at 23, with growing support across the political spectrum, as you can see by the representation of states here. Within the US, some of the newest 2022 adopters include Arizona, Kentucky, Maryland, Mississippi, New Mexico, and Washington, D.C. Welcome to all of them. We've also seen international adoption of smart health cards growing significantly in early 2022, with Japan, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, Marshall Islands, and the Federated States of Micronesia joining the ranks. This is in addition, of course, to countries where smart health cards are already supported, such as Canada, Sydney, Australia, and the Cayman Islands. Additionally, Smart Africa announced their support for smart health cards in a press release in February as part of an initiative to accelerate digital health across Africa. And for those of you who may not be aware of what Smart Africa is, this is an alliance of 32 African countries, international organizations, and global private sector entities committed to Africa's digital agenda. The Alliance is committed to accelerating sustainable socioeconomic development on the continent and to create a single digital market in Africa by 2030. One area of focus for Smart Africa is accelerating the digitization of healthcare across the continent, including designing, developing, and deploying a digital public health infrastructure for the common good. So Smart Health Cards for Africa is one of those many flagship projects, and Rwanda and Kenya will be leading with smart health cards implementations coming soon. And then last but not least, beyond COVID, we're all very excited to see the COVID case rates coming down in many places around the world and hope to see this trend continue, of course, which means that smart health cards will hopefully not be needed as often. But we also recognize that smart health cards are a convenient way for people to access clinical data more generally. And could serve as the foundation for exciting future developments. So Dr. Brian Anderson will be talking about this a little bit more during his closing remarks about what VCI is doing to drive the Beyond COVID work. You're encouraged to reach out to info@vci.org if you want to learn more or if you have any interest in helping to participate and shape this future. On February 22nd, VCI took part in a webinar in partnership with the Health Foundation as part of their Health Equity webinar series. It focused on smart health cards and health equity, was moderated by Dr. Brian Anderson, and featured Rick Clow, Dr. David Rue, and Dr. Amy Schoen as panelists. There were nearly 100 participants. And we encourage you to, if you haven't already, to listen to this webinar. It's a thoughtful discussion about an important topic. You may recall that equity is one of the 4 key design principles behind smart health cards, with the other 3 being openness and interoperability, transparency, and privacy by design. And then finally, VCI has been invited to develop and host a plenary session at ERA's national meeting on April 26th and 27th. This session will be moderated by VCI leader Chris Longhurst, Dr. Chris Longhurst, and will include public health officials from Louisiana, Oregon, California, and Washington State. You can learn more by going to this address here, www.eranationalmeeting.org. And as a reminder, VCI is a diamond sponsor of ERA, and we believe that their leadership will be key to helping more citizens get easy access to their digital immunization records across the country, and look forward to working more with them. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Jake and Tricia from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to talk more about their implementation of smart health cards.
Thank you, Ricky. I'm Jake Viola. I work for the Technology Services Division here at the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm joined by my colleague Tricia Charles from the Department of Public Health. We want to just spend the next few minutes here talking a little bit about our background, why we pursued smart health cards, some of the challenges and lessons learned in implementing smart health cards, and then finally just share an update on how it's going. I'm especially excited to share the update on how it's going because we received so much help from VCI and also from other states that have gone before us. So we just really appreciate having this network to speak with and to learn from. So with that, next slide, please, Heather. So we took a little bit of the scenic route to get to smart health cards. So here we were in 2021, last year, vaccines, we were administering the vaccines. A lot of people, or more people than we were used to, were actually reaching out to DPH because they had lost their CDC card, their physical card, and they're trying to make a request for their records. Unfortunately, the process for requesting duplicate records had always served us well, but we had never experienced the amount of volume that we got last year for that process. So we were getting a lot of demand for duplicate records from people who had lost their CDC card for their COVID-19 vaccine. The process itself was hadn't changed much over the years. It required a form to be filled out by a resident, had to be notarized, and then it had to be submitted via physical mail. And then the turnaround time could take up to 6 weeks. So we realized, okay, this is not a good process for our residents, and it's not a good process for the Department of Public Health either. So we thought, how can we fix this process? So our original goal was really just to create a portal. It was myvaxrecords.mass.gov. The idea being a resident could provide their information, their personal information, and they could get an electronic copy of all of their vaccinations that we catalog in our immunization information system. So if in 2013 I got a flu shot in Massachusetts, if I got Tdap for grad school, if I needed to prove that I've been inoculated, if I were going to off to college, something like that, or if I needed a copy of my COVID-19 vaccination, I could go onto this site. It didn't contemplate using smart health cards or having any sort of verifiable credential when we first started last summer. Heather, if you could go to the next slide, please. But then as we saw other states, some of the early adopters, I think some of you are on the call right now, like Rick Clow in California, we started looking into verifiable credentials. How can we create a tamper-resistant way to show that somebody's been vaccinated for COVID-19. So we started doing a lot of research into what other states, what other cities were doing. And we realized that there is, we thought, an enormous value add for adding the smart health card to the vaccination record that we generate for our residents. So instead of having a small subset of folks who had lost their vaccination records, we actually expanded the scope of MyVax records to serve anybody in the Commonwealth who wanted that verifiable credential, that smart health card. So it changed the scope of the project a little bit, but it was surprisingly, I'd say, easy to add that smart health card piece. And we're just excited and having our conversations with VCI, with other states, just the interoperability piece and how it can assist our residents who have to show proof of vaccination for any private businesses or local requirements that necessitate that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague Trisha. She's going to walk through a little bit more of our implementation process, some of the challenges that we encountered, and some of the things we did beforehand to try and make the whole implementation go a little bit more smoothly. Trisha?
Great, thanks, Jake. Yes, so we wanted to make sure, because we knew this was going to get a lot of attention, we wanted to be as proactive as possible, and definitely having conversations with other states who had already been through this really helped us make sure we were trying to take all of the steps that we could take. So in the fall of 2021, we started preparing for the portal and the smart health card to be available. We did reach out to providers and ask them to submit any updates to their data. So we were really targeting more demographic updates because we knew that, when constituents went into the portal, if we had out of date information for email or phone, there may be an issue with them accessing their data. So we asked providers to send in updated information as much as possible. We also started working with the Veterans Affairs in the second half of last year. So we have the VA data that was uploaded for all of our veterans. We also reached out to the RMV for demographic data uploads. And we got quite a substantial amount of emails and phone numbers for our constituents from the RMV. So we are really thankful for their help with us as well. And just, as I mentioned, we learned a lot of lessons from other states. So we were trying to mitigate as much as we could. We did a soft launch in January. So we launched the portal live, but it was only sort of announced to internal employees. So there were about 1,000 state employees that were sent an email with an invite asking them to join and try to access their information. And by doing this, we were able to get really valuable feedback about the usability and the accessibility of the portal. And then we went live to the general public on January 10th. The first, few days, we had about a 70% attempt success rate, which was beyond our dreams. So it was really exciting. We had about 80% for cell phone lookup and lower for email access. So we also implemented an electronic amendment process. So this was just to sort of get ahead of, for the people that couldn't access their records, giving them the opportunity to submit an amendment request for our team to look into why they couldn't access their record, or if the record was there or not. We also staffed up significantly for this, so to make sure we had no wait times for our call center. And we also implemented a chatbot on the actual portal, so people could ask questions right through the chatbot. Next slide, please. So we did expect challenges with record matching, mostly due to cell phone number and email addresses in the IIS. So email and phone number are how we verify the person is who they say they are. So it is used for identity verification. Being that in the MIS, we did have a significantly lower amount of emails and mobile phone numbers. So that is really what's been sort of the crux for anyone not being able to access their record. We have almost 100% of patients in the MIS. There's only like a very, very small percentage that actually just aren't in there. So we've been working really hard to try and get emails and phone numbers in there as best we can. And when we designed the electronic amendment request portal, we knew that people were going, people change phone numbers all the time, or they have multiple emails and they may try one, but they gave their provider office a different one. So there had to be like a matching. So we allowed the amendment forms to be that sort of reach out to us to kind of get all their information updated, and so that they can get into their records. Next slide. So thank you again to the VCI folks for helping us along the way. We had, I think, overwhelmingly successful launch. We have over 670,000 residents who have accessed MyVax records. That's 1 out of every 8 vaccinated residents has successfully downloaded a Smart Health Card. We have a way for people to rate us on our portal, and we are at 4.6 out of 5 stars. So I think that is incredible for a launch of this magnitude. And for our amendment forms, we are currently at a 1-day business turnaround, which is also an incredible feat for us. So we went from, up to 6 weeks of getting back to somebody to a 1-day turnaround. So overall, we've had a very successful launch. And that is the end of our presentation.
All right. Thanks so much, Jake and Tricia, for the wonderful work you've done and for the example that you've had for others who might follow in your footsteps. It's great to hear about the successes there and the challenges as well. All right. With that, we'll turn it over to Steve Posnack, Deputy National Coordinator of the ONC.
All right. Thanks, Ricky. You can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome. DJ headphones for everybody. Great. So hi, my name's Steve, and I got my Smart Health Card through Maryland. So first I want to say thank you. It was actually, I found myself as a pretty good test case. I was really curious about how things would work out for me. I went through the mass vaccination program at Maryland and then was boosted at a county health center. So did not have a primary care to go to get all of my vaccination information. And Maryland sent me a notification and I went and checked and it was there and it was great. So, thank you again. But, VCI and Smart Health Cards is really a story about the power of collaboration. And it's a story about the right timing, meeting the right technological maturity and the will to do something. And it's also a story about what happens when there's a collective focus and drive toward tangible outcomes that everyone can get behind. And so myself and our national coordinator, Mickey Tripathi, who I think many of you know, do our best to convey your story, our story, in the US every chance that we get within the administration as well as with our international partners. And so while the work that you all have done was really born out of the pressures of the COVID-19 response, this work from our perspective has really laid a new foundation for future innovation and growth in our industry. And so it's really rare in any industry, but more so in healthcare, for those of you that have been involved in healthcare for a while and are jaded perhaps or cynical like I am sometimes, for a new approach like this to be so quickly designed, tested, implemented, and in hand, and the results that you just saw from our colleagues in Massachusetts. So what you all have done is just amazing. It's great, and you all should be really proud of the work thus far. As you all know, for our office, the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology, our work spans many different areas. But top among them remains enabling individuals to get easier, more convenient access to their health information. And while QR codes have existed for quite some time, their acceptance, understanding, and use has been use case specific. It's been a little bit spotty. Maybe you've got it on one of your kids' instruction manuals. I think many of you saw that Coinbase Super Bowl ad, and half the people were like, no, don't click on the QR code. And the other people, like my wife, were like, boom, what's that? And so, we now see them, restaurant menus, payment, you name it, QR codes are everywhere. And I think the acceptance and understanding and cultural usage of them is just going to increase over time. So the question is, why not more in healthcare beyond just the specific COVID-19 use case? And that's really part of that bigger picture, that future case that we're interested in and that we're looking at. So while smart health cards isn't the only standard out there internationally, and we know, as was just noted, spreading the global reach continues, we've been making sure that our colleagues at the global level are aware of what's going on in the United States, as well as the other smart health card related nations. And so to that end, part of my role, and I know Brian and I are on quite a bit of phone calls together, part of my role involves international digital health collaboration. And I've been working with our colleagues in HHS in particular. We have a global affairs office to make sure that they know what US related work is going on at the state level and with all of the VCI private sector partners to make sure that other nations with whom we interact, this includes G7, G20, APEC, Asia Pacific, WHO activities, as well as other globally scaled venues, are all aware of the progress that you all are making. So often it's without very much notice that I ping Brian and say, what are the most recent updates, from VCI? And I want to thank you all if you help him out in getting some of those. More recently, just to give you a quick sense of what's coming down the pike, the WHO, in collaboration with OECD and another organization called the Global Digital Health Partnership, which I'll tell you about in a second, has requested a technical consultation of members that are part of these larger digital health trust networks for vaccination credential related information when it comes to COVID-19. And so that will be convened over a 3-day session over the next 2 weeks in April. I'll happen to be co-chairing this with WHO and the OECD on behalf of an organization called the Global Digital Health Partnership. The US, which is me, in this case, is the chair of the Global Digital Health Partnership for the next 2 years. If you'd like to find out more information about it, we actually just had a working session yesterday and launched a new refreshed website. So you can go to gdhp.health to get a sense of the organization and a bit about who's involved. So more to come from that. And I know we have a few of our colleagues from VCI plugged into that effort over the next 2 weeks in April. And so lastly, we see a lot of potential when it comes to smart health cards. And I think for all of you, as this has been rolled out in your various jurisdictions or as part of your technological offerings, I'm sure for you all too, the coolest thing has been the anecdotes, the responses, the nearly 5-star ratings of like, it's just working. It's amazing. And this is, one of those cases where we can say in the broader interoperability scale is like, this is what we mean when we talk about interoperability, the kind of seamless connectivity, the ease of use, the convenience, the user acceptance. And equally, as we have these discussions with our colleagues internationally, the comparisons to paper are pretty evident. The potential for authenticity, provenance, and trust are just far and above, more than what you're going to get out of, a white card in this case. And so as we look to the future, it is going beyond just the COVID-19 vaccination history. It's, all immunizations and the ability to start to extrapolate that further as we look at other workflows within and user experiences within the healthcare system. So you see, domestically, lots of opportunities, ranging from that pesky clipboard and registration information. Wouldn't it be great, just like when I buy, a Starbucks coffee if I'm out there in person, to just, boop, scan my phone and have all my registration information if I've got to go to that random urgent care for my kids, and just pop that right in. The full slate of immunizations all the way to summary care record information that people can have at hand and at their fingertips. And then similarly, the global prompt for digitizing this information has created some discussions internationally around the quote unquote yellow card and the international health regulations. For those that have traveled often, you may have had to do that, and what a digital version of that would look like, across the globe internationally. And so we're really positioned, and I want to thank you all again, for your work. You're really positioned the U.S. to have, technology and expertise to share at that global level. and have a say and a seat at the international table. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to just say some brief remarks, give you an update on what we've been up to and what I've been doing at the federal level. And thank you again for your continued efforts. Back over to you, Ricky.
Thanks so much, Steve. I'll always enjoy hearing from you and the work that ONC is doing. And great to hear the updates about GDHP. I put that link in the chat for those that would like to learn more about that. So now we'll turn over to Rick Clow for a California update.
Thanks so much, Ricky. Good morning, good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Wanted to provide you all an update on some of the things that we've done in California. And something that honestly, initially, I didn't even think necessarily merited sharing with the broader crowd, but I think it speaks to both the ease and simplicity of generating smart health cards, the usability that they've had, but also some confusion amongst the average user that is, I think in hindsight, entirely understandable, and something pretty simple that we did to try and counter it. So to refresh your memory, for those that aren't as familiar with California's story, we launched our digital vaccine record in June of last year. A couple of headlines from when we went live. The results were pretty quickly tremendous. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see the blog posts that we put out there that, in just a couple of weeks, we delivered our 1 millionth digital vaccine record. Sometime shortly after this call concludes, we'll deliver our 15 millionth digital vaccine record, to give you just a sense of certainly the scale at which California operates, but the consistent continued uptake. That's all really good news. People really enjoyed, but it's important to note that we launched in June before either Apple or Google were natively supporting smart health cards. So there were a whole bunch of people for whom their smart health card retrieval resulted in a screenshot that they stored on their camera roll. So if we go to the next slide, and I just realized that we don't have the build, so you can't see the entire tweet behind this screenshot. But I had a ton of people last summer reaching out to me over Twitter, by email, asking for, oh my gosh, this QR code is great, but really, why can't I just store it in Apple Wallet? And of course, we couldn't share at the time, but having talked to Ricky and his team, we knew that this was coming. And thankfully, with iOS 15.1 in the fall, Apple Wallet had the ability to natively store your smart health card, which is great, except that we had millions of people who'd already retrieved their smart health card and didn't know that there was something else they had to do. Of course, that wasn't all. After this shipped, go to the next slide, now we have boosters. So booster shots get approved in California in November. And a whole set of new questions started coming up from people like, Tron, well, does the thing on my phone just automatically update? And of course, the answer is no. And it turns out that if you actually talk to folks, most of them would generally agree, yeah, I don't want the government automatically updating things on my phone. And I think I might want to know when that happens and might want to have control over it. So we had to explain to folks that, no, your smart health card is a static document. You retrieve it, it's yours. It doesn't change. But of course, if you get a new dose, well, now there's new information that's not contained in that smart health card that you retrieved over the summer or earlier in the fall before you got your booster dose. So we found ourselves last winter facing this issue of millions of people who'd retrieved their digital vaccine record, millions of people who had then received a booster dose, whose smart health card stored on their phone had no record of that booster dose. And in fact, as the venue requirements, in some cases, for instance, when I went to a Warriors game a couple of months ago in San Francisco, I had to prove that I'd been vaccinated and boosted in order to be allowed to enter the venue. And for people who just assume like, oh, I just show you my Apple Wallet QR code and I'm all set. Well, if I don't get a new smart health card, it's not going to have evidence of that booster. So we debated a couple of questions about what to do about this, and ultimately went with, again, what in hindsight seems like a fairly simple answer, but had no precedent at the Department of Public Health previously, which was, go ahead to the next slide. How about we just send millions of text messages? So let's take everyone that had retrieved a digital vaccine record previously and for whom we have evidence of at least one subsequent dose. We'll send the text message on the left, hope that people don't get annoyed by receiving this message. And what the numbers show you is the volume of requests. If you look at February 13th, which was a Sunday when we didn't send these text messages, and February 20th, which was a Sunday when we did, the volume nearly quadrupled. And the success rate of matches went up because, of course, we're sending to a universe of people who'd already received a digital vaccine record. So the likelihood of them being able to successfully retrieve a subsequent record is nearly 100%. So not only were people not annoyed by this text message, the click-through rates were astronomically high. In fact, if you take that one weekend in February from the Friday, the 18th to Sunday, the 20th, we generated 400,000 roughly digital vaccine records in that time, out of a total number of text messages sent that weekend of about 1 million. So when we looked at that data, the takeaway was really clear. A lot of people had not downloaded their updated digital vaccine record. B, when they got a text message from us, they responded to it. In fact, I think this was it was the prior weekend was when the 49ers were playing in Los Angeles. So you had 2 California teams in the playoffs, and we still had hundreds of thousands of people clicking through. That was tremendously encouraging, that we were delivering wanted information to a community of people who previously demonstrated interest in this record. And the end result was a number of people who had received their DVR in the summer before their phones natively supported storing the record in either Apple Wallet or Google Pay, now got prompted when they requested the new digital vaccine record to natively store it in their device, which was, again, that much more useful. So wanted to just share that quick anecdote with you all as further evidence that, to follow on what you heard from Jake and Tricia in Massachusetts, what you heard from Steve at the national level, this is a tremendously useful, wanted format for storing information that gives people access to information they care about and makes it something that they can choose to share when and where they want, that we've been really happy to have been able to support and continue to grow. So I'll take a look in the chat, see if there have been any questions, but with that, I'll turn it back to Ricky.
Great. Thanks so much, Rick. It's exciting to see how easy this has become. I've heard lots of anecdotes of people who are waiting in line for events and they're able to get their digital vaccine record while standing in line in 30 seconds. And it makes me wonder how many people who are in line for the football game there did exactly that. And because of the work of you and your team, were able to do so very, very quickly and easily. So thanks for your work and leadership in this area. With that, we'll turn it over to the technical team, Christian and Dr. JP Pollock, to give us an update.
Thanks, Ricky. I'll get started here. Heather, if you want to go forward a slide, maybe. Great. So today, sort of following in our VCI webinar tradition of getting a quick update on where things stand with technical aspects of smart health cards. Just have a couple of brief topics to cover. The update about where things are with our sort of default verifier application. Some updates that we've made to the VCI directory in terms of exposing some various issuer data to make use of that a little bit easier. And then Christian is going to spend a few minutes talking about a more exciting update to the directory, including a daily snapshot of public keys and issuers and such. So if you go to next slide, the verifier application. So this is an app that's been downloaded nearly 1 million times. It's the use of this app is sort of less prevalent here in the US, where verification is maybe less common. It's been used quite widely in Canada and other places to date. And one of the things that we've been asked for several times over the last several months is to make laboratory testing available. And so that is in testing right now, testing the testing feature, and should be available at some point within the next couple of weeks, as soon as it gets through various app approval processes and the like. And finally, for those of you who have been waiting for this, the app is open source, and that is available now. We'll also post a link into the chat in a bit. I encourage you all to take a look, issue PRs, comments, whatever you see fit, and help us all make this a little bit better. On to the next slide. So the next improvement that we've made to VCI directory and Common Trust Network is providing some additional metadata to make the use of this information in the directory a little bit easier. The original issuers file still exists as is and shares the most basic of information, the ISS, where the public keys are located for the issuer, and that you can use to do matching, as well as the name of the issuer. But this metadata file is focused more on additional information that you might want to use to either segregate how you display issuers in an application, or how you surface information on a website, or also provide information to folks about how they might receive technical support for fetching records. The one that was sort of most requested is this issuer type. And so we've been able to provide that for all of the issuers. Some of the others we're working through and backfilling issuers as we move on. So hopefully folks find that useful. We're already using it on our various websites to help surface different categories of issuers in a way that's automated, as opposed to the horrible manual work that our teams have been doing in the past. Christian, if you want to give an update on the more interesting of this stuff, the directory snapshot.
Right, thank you, JP. So there's two new aspects that's been added on the directory. The first one is the creation of a sign directly snapshot for all the issuer keys and revocation information for those issuers who support the revocation feature. So currently, when a verifier validates the smart health cards, they have to look up the issuer and typically download the validation public key, and which kind of prevents verifiers to operate in an offline manner. So it's desirable to have this snapshot view of all the issuer of the trusted VCI issuers along with their keys. And so we've created scripts that on a daily basis go on, fetch all the keys and package them in this evolving snapshot. It is signed, therefore you can will allow us to redistribute it in other mechanisms than on the GitHub page, as it is currently the case. And the certificate that signs this snapshot is also available on the GitHub repo. And so this will allow verifiers to just retrieve that, and on a frequent basis, and at every update, getting a fresh view of all the directory. So if you can imagine scenarios where you're at a kiosk or a mass transit venue or a big sport venue, and you can just scan smart L cards, and validation could operate very fast there. It also contains all the old issuer keys, so you can imagine a verifier, an issuer going offline. They get acquired by another company, and they lose their website, but the smart health cards should remain valid as long as the keys have not been compromised. So the snapshot will act also as an archive of old valid keys that might not be online for some reason. The second aspect that we added on the scripting and the auditing of the VCI directory is an audit log that also runs daily and reports all sorts of issues. when an issuer gets added to the VCI directory, there are some scripts that runs, make sure that everything is correctly deployed. But these things can change your TLS configuration. Keys might appear and disappear. So these scripts make sure that the deployment hygiene is respected, every day, and also gives you some statistics and some analysis across different issuers. Issuers should have unique keys, and these scripts will detect if there's some key duplications or other artifacts and names and whatnot that are duplicated. Will report errors. So that's not currently used for anything. To make, let's say, to kick issuers out of the list or anything, but that gives us tools to go and inspect the behaviors of all the issuers across time. And these are kept every day. They can have the archive of all the snapshots that have been released over time. So if somebody wants to do a formal audit of how the VCI operates, this gives us great data for that. That's it.
All right, thanks so much, JP and Christian, for these updates. To conclude, we'll turn it over to Dr. Brian Anderson to discuss beyond COVID, as we mentioned before. Brian?
Thanks, Ricky. And great having the chance to hear from so many of our colleagues and the work that they've been doing to advance this effort, the specification for smart health cards and the utilization of it across our country and internationally. Hearing and reflecting on, the work that is exemplified by folks like Jake and Trisha in Massachusetts, or the work that Rick and our colleagues in California have been doing. One of the interesting, natural questions that many of us in VCI have been asking is, so what's next? So states have begun to issue vaccination credentials for COVID. Is there opportunity to explore doing something similarly, leveraging this specification to create trustworthy, portable copies of one's vaccination records outside of just COVID, as an example? And it's something that we've begun looking into, and many of you that have been part of this journey with us, we've spoken to you about. And so we discussed a little bit about what some of those next steps are going to be at HIMSS, and I think we're going to post a video for that HIMSS session on smart health cards online in a little bit, and we can send out that link. But in essence, it's about a concept called smart health links. So as probably many of you on the technical side know, there are limitations to the data payload that can be contained in a QR code. It's not obviously limitless. It's it has an upper bound that certainly is less than one's longitudinal health record. And yet there are lots of use cases that many companies that frankly has been a major effort of interoperability, represented by many of you here on this call, that is around enabling individuals to have access to their longitudinal health record, or certainly the critical components of their longitudinal health record. And it has never been a story just about your COVID vaccination record. It's been a story much broader than that. And that work effort has been going on for, probably frankly, close to a decade. And so one of the things that we're going to start pivoting to is how can we help accelerate that work? Steve Posnack from ONC was alluding to a lot of that interoperability work that so many stakeholders have been working on diligently for this past decade. And how can smart health links, which is the next progression that we're seeing in smart health cards, which is essentially an embedded URL in the QR code that allows us to essentially get around that upper payload limit in the data amount of a QR code, so that one might be able to have representative, accessible, trustworthy copies of their health record that they can share with whomever they want. And so we're going to be launching an effort in that space and looking for your feedback from the community as to the most relevant use cases that are impactful, timely, and implementable in that space. Is it vaccinations beyond COVID? Is it school enrollment requirements and the forms that if you're a parent, we all fill out and we share with the school? So a vaccine form that has all those pre-populated. Is it aspects of your longitudinal health record that are already regulated and required for you to be able to have access to? Can we make those portable and trustworthy and verifiable? Additionally, we're also beginning to really lean into this, this concept of having vaccine records that are not just digitally available, but that can be available to those individuals in our society that don't have a smartphone, and ensuring that we're addressing that equity concern in a very meaningful way. So you'll hear more about that ability to ensure that individuals that don't have smartphones to be able to have a verifiable copy of their health record. Either it's a sticker that you have that's a QR code or a smart health link, or a paper plastic card that looks like a credit card that one might have. So, this is the excitement that many of us have that's very tangible around smart health links and where we're going in the future. The last thing I'll say is that you're going to hear a lot more in the coming week about that WHO effort that Steve Posnack mentioned. We're looking to actively engage this whole community within VCI. We recognize that, it really is an effort that each of us own and frankly have a responsibility to ensure that we're advancing for the use cases that we're all aligned around, which is fundamentally about empowering individuals with their health records. And so lots more to come on that, lots more exciting stuff as we're working with frankly the rest of the world in this effort that the WHO is kicking off to create a more interoperable framework across all of the standards and specifications in this space to ensure that our society is a more resilient society as we build towards the next normal. So with that, thank you so much for joining. Thank you to our panelists for participating and for Ricky for moderating today's webinar. And we will see you on our next webinar coming up in the next couple of months. Thank you so much. Have a great day.